Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Projects that Democrats will reclaim control of the U.S. House of Representatives, winning new power to take on the President of the United States. This is a very significant defeat for Mr. Trump, a historic accomplishment for the Democrats. Even though some House races remain undecided, CNN can now make this projection with a very high degree of confidence based on statistical models that track races that Democrats already have won and analyze races where they're leading significantly right now. Again, CNN can now project that Democrats will win the majority in the U.S. House of Representatives.
Woohoo! All right, were you eating? Were you drinking? Were you crying in the bathroom? What did you do? How'd you cope? How'd you deal? Because it started out really good. I think like the first person I saw, get cast away was Barbara Comstock from Virginia, and I thought, okay, it's gonna be a good night. Let's just sit around and have some coffee. And as the night wore on and on and on and on and on, and I realized that a lot of things, I told you, you weren't going to know who won Georgia last night. Didn't I tell you that? Florida, we can't, it's just not, it's not possible that Florida would have a clean, easy election cycle. It's just, it's not possible. So there's a lot of things that are still undecided. As you know, the only thing that we know for sure is lots of women, I think 96 women won offices, one will be going to Capitol. Not all of them Democrats, but 96 women. So that's really cool. You have a lot of contested. I can't even tell you about all the governorships. I can't because ours is not really settled. I mean, I saw Gillum last night concede. Now, let me just tell you what the law here is in Florida. It doesn't matter if he concedes or not. It really doesn't. What matters is if the difference between the two candidates is 0.5% or less. And if it is 0.5% or less, an automatic recount is triggered by law. Secretary of State has to do it. And so Gillum right now and DeSantis, that we would have, I tweeted it last night. Hey, Florida, we have a white nationalist governor. Only because Andrew Gillum had gone on TV and conceded, and I just thought maybe he had numbers that we didn't have. Maybe he saw something we didn't see. But oh no. What he didn't understand or what I guess he just wanted to seem like a gentleman. I really have no idea why he did it because it's now 0.6. That's 0.6% between Ron DeSantis and Andrew Gillum for governor. So we have overseas ballots that haven't come in yet. We have absentee ballots we haven't voted that we haven't counted yet. We have provisional ballots that we haven't counted yet. And I got news for you. About 1 in 10 of all the mail-in ballots. What did I tell you? This is why I don't vote by mail. I told you the story of my mother. How I vote by mail. And I said they just throw them away. 1 in 10 vote by mail ballots are thrown away. Know why? Everybody? Well, let's see. We have these really, really easy to understand rules. If you didn't sign the outside of your envelope, you have a chance to fill out an affidavit and say, oh, wait, I didn't sign the outside of my envelope, but that was my vote. If you did sign the inside of your envelope, but they don't agree that your that your signature matches what they have on the, it's the exact match thing. We have it here too for signatures. Then you don't get notified. So you have no chance. So there's a lawsuit. There's a lawsuit. It's Florida, everybody. It's Florida. People were asking me on Twitter last night, Randy, what's the matter with Florida? What's the matter? And you know what? I just didn't. I didn't answer. You know why? It's just. That's how long it would take to explain that this is Florida. Okay, this is a weird ass state. The places where people actually live and work vote blue. The places where the agricultural runoff comes from, where the red tide comes from, where the blooms of algae come from, they vote red. So we don't know what's going on in Florida. And I also don't know who won the Senate race, because even though last night, the old hospital chain owner who ripped off Medicare to the greatest Medicare ripoff in the history of the world, Rick Scott, who's trying to be our senator to replace Bill Nelson, the two of them are separated by less than 0.5 of 1 percentage point. Now, here's what strikes me as being odd in Florida. Except for, all the things I just mentioned. In addition, it's odd that people would go to the polls and restore 1 million ex-felons who have paid their dues, paid their society, paid their debt to society, and are completely finished with that part of their lives, that they would vote to restore their voting rights, but would also vote for Ron DeSantis. It doesn't make any sense. All right, so that's Florida. We don't know. Georgia, also, we don't know. It is too close to call. Arizona, Kirsten Sinema, Martha McSally, we don't know. Too close to call. House race in Texas, House race 23, District 23. That's Will Hurd. Will Hurd, everybody, running against Ms. Ortiz-Jones. Will Hurd is an ex-CIA guy, and Ms. Ortiz-Jones is an Iraq veteran and an ex-intelligence officer as well. They couldn't figure it out. Okay, that nobody's called that one yet. Mississippi, what I tell you. Didn't I tell you yesterday that no one was talking about Mississippi, and you had 2 seats? You had Thad Cochran's seat that had to be filled, and you had an open seat. There's going to be a runoff on November 27th in Mississippi between Mike Espy, the former Secretary of Agriculture, who is an African-American Democrat, and Cindy Hyde-Smith. Going to be a runoff there. I don't think anybody explained to you how many, you got 689 votes, separating Gina Ortiz-Jones from Will Hurd in Texas. You had, Beto O'Rourke, he lost by like 1 point. 1 point. I just find this all so fascinating. Everything's within 1 point. America is divided right down the ass crack, or votes were flipping on Texas machines, which we previously reported. Or Georgia was practicing so much voter suppression. They did so much voter suppression that blonde hair and blue-eyed voters replaced the dark-skinned, brown-eyed voters. See what I mean? Florida, we just don't count the mail-ins. We just don't. Okay, and there were a lot of overvotes, according to Howard, who was at the polls. People don't know what they're doing. I don't know. But you had just a crazy election in these ridiculous places. In these places, all controlled by Republican governors and Republican secretaries of state. Coincidence? I don't know. But we'll just have to wait and see. But I will tell you, this country is completely divided. And you know how it's divided? Forget red and blue. That ain't it. It's divided by city folks and suburban folks and women folks and black folks and Latino folks versus bitter white older people. That is it. That is the divide. And the bitter, older, whiter people live in rural areas and the more diverse areas. We have no problem with voting. You want to hear how crazy it really is? Okay, a dead guy and 2 indicted felons won. No, I'm not kidding. Chris Collins, who endorsed Trump, remember Chris Collins, that guy from New York, first House member to endorse Donald Trump in 2016, charged with securities fraud, wire fraud, making false statements, stemming from alleged insider trading in stocks of pharmaceutical companies. Remember him? Indicted? He won. In New York, upstate New York. Duncan Hunter, 60 criminal indictment, 60, oh my God, 60 different distinct charges against him. He won. San Diego. And the dead guy was that brothel owner. What's his name? Dennis Hoff? Is that his name? Yeah, Dennis Hoff. He was running for a state seat in Nevada, and he died. He was a Trump supporter, and he won. They would rather vote for these people that live in rural little creepy areas. They would rather vote for a dead person than a Democrat. I swear to God. They would rather vote for a criminal, an indicted criminal, than they would for a Democrat. They would rather vote for somebody who was jacking up the price of pharmaceutical, getting insider trading on the White House lawn, videotaped. And they would rather vote for a criminal than they would for a Democrat. That's how divided this freaking country is. Now, I will tell you, Democrats cast a whole, just by sheer numbers, many more votes than Republicans did. And still, we didn't get the Senate. Okay, we just didn't do it. Now, it might be 51 seats, and it could be 52 to 54 seats. We don't know, because we don't have the answers to this is America in the 21st century, okay? My bank statement gets it down to the freaking penny. Every single day. Every single month. The IRS will get it down to the freaking penny. But we don't have a reliable way to vote in America in red states. All right. That's believable. That's plausible. Yeah, we all agree that it's just too difficult a thing to demand or to do. Yeah, we get it. But anyway, you had a lot of flipping going on last night. Here was the situation in the Senate, and this is why nobody thought that this was our year for the Senate, and they were right because, and I said it too, we had too many seats we had to defend. It's just luck of the draw. I mean, you have a third of the Senate running, every 2 years, right? Because they're 6 years terms, and we don't have all of them coming up for grabs at one time. And so last night we were forced to defend 26 seats, I think. I forget how many already. 35? Was it 35 seats? Yeah, I think it was 35 seats. And only... Was it 35 seats? I can't, I got so many numbers in my head. All I could tell you, here's the easy way to do it. Only one GOP held seat was on the ballot yesterday. Only one held by a GOP incumbent. And that was Dean Heller's seat in Nevada. And he lost. And he lost early in the last night. Happened real quick. So he was knocked off early. Jackie Rosen, who I was telling you was a good choice, that was the only GOP incumbent that the GOP had to defend. You see what I mean? 10 Democrats. 10 Democrats had to defend their seats. Right, that was it. So you had Donnelly, Heitkamp, McCaskill, Nelson, and all up for re-election. And they lost. Donnelly in Indiana, he went early. Heidi Heitkamp, of course, they suppressed the Native American vote there. We knew that. I told you they had lost their court battle. The Native Americans did, and they said, "Oh no, you can't vote with a P.O. box." What? You can't vote with a P.O. box? All right, so that happened. McCaskill got hammered. I mean, she just got wiped off. Bill Nelson, we don't know if he won or lost. That's Florida. We just don't know. And the 10 were all in states that Trump won. Those 10 were all in states that Trump won. The only GOP incumbent that was on the ballot last night was Dean Heller, and he lost. Marsha Blackburn won Tennessee. That really pissed me off, I have to say. Arizona, we don't know. We just don't know. It's like I said, too close to call. Kristen Sinema and Martha McSally, they're in a battle for Jeff Flake's old seat, and it's too close to call. So we don't know how that. They just called Tester. They just called Montana and gave it to Tester, so he holds his seat. But again, that's a Republican in a red state. How many times did Trump go to West Virginia? How many times was he there? Like 900, right? Yeah. Well, Manchin kept his seat. They love him. Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, Sherrod Brown of Ohio, Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin, Debbie Stabenow of Michigan, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, all reelected. No problem there. So what we have is 52, maybe 54 seats. We just don't know because 50. I don't. It could change because Mississippi has a runoff on the 27th, and if Mike Espy wins, oh come on, Mississippi, do it. Then we add one. Arizona, we could add one. Florida, we wouldn't add one. We would just keep one. So I just don't know. Now, on the heels of all that, your crazy ass president gave an unhinged, off the freaking charts press conference today that went on and on and on and on for an hour and a half of real sick, twisted crap and lying and threatening media people. And then Jeff Sessions resigned.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
The Chief of Staff for Senator Bill Nelson says we will not be hearing a concession speech today from Nelson, and that is because this election is going to a recount. Per Florida state law, if the candidates are within less than 0.5% of each other, it triggers an automatic recount, goes back to the counties, and they start canvassing those votes all over again. That is what's going to happen here in this Senate race. We knew that these races were going to be extremely close. Obviously, Gillum's race was not close enough for an automatic recount.
I don't know.
I think Democrats today, as they are in a lot of places, are feeling a bit defeated, a bit let down by the results of what happened in Florida. We saw polls leading up to yesterday suggesting that Democrats had opened a narrow lead. Both Gillum and Nelson in their races seemed like they were polling ahead. And then, last night everything changed, but it really did come down to just a percentage point on the gubernatorial side and less than 0.5 percentage point on the Senate side. So we will now go into what Florida is very familiar with, a recount.
Oh, no.
And this could take some time. Stephanie?
All right, Steve, take us a little deeper on this Florida race.
Yeah, look, you can see here, Rick Scott, obviously the margin is, you just hear 35,000 votes. See what happens in the recount. Remember the famous Florida recount there back in 2000 in the presidential election. The final margin there was 537 votes. So obviously a wider margin potentially going into it. I think the story we had in Florida was watching these returns come in last night, standing here, I had flashbacks to 2016. I was standing in the same spot. You saw the early returns in the polling heading into the election in 2016 favoring Hillary Clinton. You saw last night the polling heading into it in the early returns favoring Bill Nelson. And then what happened? You started getting the same day vote, not the early vote, the people who actually waited till election day to turn out then. And you saw the race turn, and really where you saw it turn was the Gulf Coast and then up here, Volusia County as well. Rick Scott started to get much stronger performance when the same day vote came in these key counties. This is a place that Donald Trump, there was sort of surge Trump support in Volusia in 2016. We can show you Trump got 55% here. Look at that. Rick Scott ended up matching it. That's one of those counties you look back at and you say, it's the reason Trump won Florida, one of the reasons he won the presidency. And in Florida, this is not the national story that emerged last night, but there are some places on the map. Florida's one of them. Ohio looks like another. There are some others as well where those lines of division from 2016 really did reassert themselves last night. Florida's a classic example. The path that Scott took last night and the path, by the way, that DeSantis took in the governor's race, an awful lot like the path that Trump took in 2016 in Florida.
I don't think so. It didn't look anything like that to me. What it looks like to me is that Gillum and DeSantis are separated by about 5,000 votes, and that Rick Scott and Bill Nelson are, separated by about 34,000 votes. This is Florida. It's just, and they love the troops, right? They love the troops, these Republicans. But it's so interesting. They don't count the military ballots unless they absolutely have to. And now they absolutely have to. We've got provisional ballots that remain. We have some mail-in ballots that we have to look at. It's just so between Gillum and DeSantis, even though DeSantis claimed victory, and so did Rick Scott last night. What the hell's wrong with these people? I mean, even their victories, everything was a lie last night. It was just not true because DeSantis and Gillum are like 0.6 of 1 point right now, and they're still looking at it. And the state cast 8.1 million votes. So you see what I mean? No one, and Arizona, no one knows what happened in Arizona. Mississippi, you're going to have a runoff over there. I mean, it's just crazy. This is nuts. But there was a lot of good news. There was like, thank you, Wisconsin. Thank you very much. Thank you, Virginia. Virginia, you did a great job. Bye-bye, Mr. Bratt. Bye, Bratt. Bratty bastard. Patty, I always want to call him Patty, but John Tester, you remember Trump went to Montana? I can't tell you how many times saying he had dirt on John Tester because John Tester had the temerity to say that the Candyman doctor that was on Air Force One who was handed out Provigil to wake you up and Ambien to put you to sleep without prescriptions shouldn't be in charge of the VA. Remember that? Ronnie Jackson, Dr. Ronnie Jackson, everybody. And he is still under investigation, Dr. Ronnie Jackson. And Trump went out to Montana to campaign over and over and over and over again. How many rallies did he do out there? And he said, I got dirt on. You won't believe what we're finding on John Tester. John Tester won last night. Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin won. Bob Casey of Pennsylvania. Sherrod Brown, great one in Ohio. Debbie Stabenow, Michigan. How many times did he go to West Virginia? Joe Manchin. Dean Heller is gone. Okay, flipped that seat to Jackie Rosen. We have a lot of governorships that flipped. I think 7 of them went from red to blue. That's excellent, excellent, excellent news. Texas and Tennessee. Texas was so close. Tennessee was not. Texas was. It's just like, oh God, it's the proverbial hair. Oh my God, and I just it's so hard to say that happens. You know what I mean? Because we were reporting on those machines in Texas, not checking the box. Checking the box for Ted Cruz. If you voted straight Democratic ticket, we reported it. We showed you the local TV video of it. I tweeted it. That thing got more retweets because Texas is huge, and Texans were passing it around to each other. And then it comes down to like less than 1%. It drives me crazy. Why? If you can account for every single penny, every single nickel when it comes to paying taxes or when it comes to banking or when anything that you care about is so unbelievably well accounted for, and yet when it comes to voting it's like we'll count the military ballots if we have to, we'll count the provisional ballots if we have to. Mail-in ballots, we won't tell anybody that if they signed and we didn't like their signature, and we have no training in signature, analysis, none whatsoever. But if we don't like, how many times did you have to sign your name, Scott?
3 times.
3 times he had to sign his name.
Yeah, they.
How old are you? 34?
35.
Yeah, 35. Yeah. Can you imagine what happens to like somebody like my mother who did mail in her ballot and they don't like her signature because it doesn't match what's on her Social Security card, which she probably signed when she was like, 25?
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, here at least, when you go to vote in person, you got to sign a screen.
Yeah.
And anybody that's ever signed a tablet.
The UPS thing.
Yeah, the UPS thing, for example, you never sign your signature exactly the same. It's near impossible. I mean,
and what's interesting is when I use the screen to sign, for UPS, or I always say to the UPS driver, that looks nothing like my signature. And he goes, close enough.
Yeah, never.
Well, the same thing when you vote, you sign in on that UPS-like screen, and you look at the signature, and it looks like a child did it. It doesn't look like your signature.
Yeah, the first time I put like zero effort into it, and then she's like, yeah, this doesn't match. I'm like, and then I tried again, and then they're like, nope, try again. And I'm like, she's like, good enough. And I'm like, great.
See, this is why I insist on in-person voting. This is why, because what if he signed his ballot and they didn't like it? He wouldn't be there to get a second chance and a third chance. You see what I'm saying? This is ridiculous. But it is what it is. And so now Florida's going to get recounted. God knows what's going to go on in Arizona. Bob in Arizona. No, is this Bob? Should be Bob.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, Bob.
Hi. Hi. How are you? Sorry. So I believe that.
What are you doing? Tending to your fairy garden there? I'm into it now. It's just a new thing with me. Just got to say, into the fairy gardens.
Well, I'm feeling kind of enthusiastic about yesterday, even though it wasn't great. It was enough.
It was enough. We didn't get, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you get what you need. Why he campaigns to that song, I have no idea. But
God, it's hilarious.
It is hilarious. I mean, I can understand the old, crusty Lee Greenwood song, but the Rolling Stones, you can't always get what you want. It should be Sympathy for the Devil, but even that right there, he tells his people, you're not going to get anything.
I'm watching the returns last night, and I'm looking at them, and I'm thinking, this is enough to get in his way. And I'm looking at the Senate returns, right? And I'm watching Florida, and Florida's always a disappointment, and Arizona's and Arizona is always just kind of wickedly kind of crazy, right?
Crazy, yeah.
But I'm thinking that if the recount goes in our way, right?
Yeah.
Arizona. And you count Arizona and Florida, we get Maine and we get New Hampshire, and we get those states, the Caucasus states. We're up to a 50-50 tie.
Now.
Oh, help me out with that, because I keep looking at that.
So right now, it's going to be anywhere from, they'll have 52 to 54, something like that. It doesn't, but
it doesn't make a difference if you're going to lose by two votes or one vote.
Okay, here's where it makes a difference. Because they did away with the filibuster rule for Supreme Court nominees, God help us, if Ruth Bader Ginsburg or, just anybody really retires or, something happens, he'll get another one, and it's just a 50-vote threshold. So that's
what I mean, though. We weren't going to get over the 50 threshold, not in this cycle.
Well,
anyway,
right. I didn't think we would, and like I said, this is why we had 35 seats that were up for discussion, let's say, and only one of all those seats, only one of them was a GOP incumbent, and that was Dean Heller's seat. Everybody else was a Democrat. So we had to defend all these seats. And, of course, it didn't work out for us in Indiana. It didn't work out for us in North Dakota because they rigged it. In North Dakota, obviously, they wouldn't let Native Americans or people with P.O. boxes. And I kept trying to tell you that there were more non-Native Americans that were affected by this P.O. box decision than there were Native Americans. Percentage-wise, there was a higher percentage of Native Americans, but just the straight head count, there were tons of people that couldn't vote in North Dakota because they used P.O. boxes. Missouri, that I didn't expect that Claire McCaskill, one way or the other, I didn't expect that she would win or lose. I really had no idea what was going on there, but we lost that too. So, but the thing is, we were defending all these blue seats in red states. 10 of those blue seats in the Senate were in red states. And that's where we came up short.
Sometime in the very near future, I want to have a discussion about why we have a tendency to authoritarianism and fascism.
It's easy. It's easy. People can't think for themselves, like people to step up to the microphone and be strong. and wrong doesn't matter. But strong and wrong is what they'll go for over, somebody who is professorial or, thoughtful or, is a policy person. They don't have the patience for it. They can't. It's short attention span theater.
Well, I'm looking forward to this next session. Even with Jeff Sessions kind of kicked out, I'm looking forward to it because we finally get a body check.
A body check?
In the hockey kind of way, we get to check Donald Trump for a change. We get to
we do have some oversight now. That's what you're trying to say.
Yep.
Yeah, we do. We have some oversight. Adam Schiff, the Democrat, Adam Schiff from California, is now the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. I just blanked out on his name. Jerry Nadler from New York is now chairman of the Judiciary Committee. We have the tax right. We get all the committees. The majority gets the committees. So that's cool.
We do have breaking news to tell you about of the worst variety. There's been another deadly mass shooting in America, the second in less than 2 weeks. Overnight, police say a gunman opened fire inside a Southern California bar that was filled with college kids. There are 12 people dead, including a sheriff's deputy. Authorities say there are more injured. They don't have the numbers yet. The suspected gunman is dead.
The largest mass shooting in this country in 12 days.
12 days.
Let that sink in. Police say hundreds of people were inside the bar. College students, as Allison said. The bar was hosting a college country music night. Witnesses describe a scene of sheer panic. People were ordered to get down to the ground once the gunfire rang out. Others broke windows in order to escape, and one of those killed was a sergeant, 29 years on the force, Ron Heelis, who was the first law enforcement officer to confront the shooter. He is now dead, 29 years on the force.
Let that sink in. You want to know the truth? This morning when I heard that, that this was the second mass shooting in 12 days, I couldn't remember what the last mass shooting was about. And I had to sit there and rack my brain and go through all the mass shootings I could remember and which was the last one. And of course it was the one in Pittsburgh, the synagogue, 11 people shot there. That's how ridiculously sick this country is with guns. That's how sick it is. You can't, this is my job, and I can't remember which mass shooting came before. What was the Kroger shooting? Well, that's not a mass shooting because he only shot 2 people. Got to shoot 4 in order for it to be a mass shooting. So it can't be the Kroger. Can't be the one where a white guy killed 2 black people in a supermarket for no apparent reason in front of one guy's grandchild and another woman in the parking lot. It can't be that way. So which one was it? Which one? That's how sick it is. And what we have here today is an ex-Marine killing a police officer. Which side do you think the NRA will be on there? Ooh, that's a conundrum. Here you got an ex-Marine shooting a police officer who was 54 years old, Deputy Heelis, ready for retirement. He was just about to retire. He was going to go back to school. He was going to get a graduate degree. He actually trained other people in gun safety. That's what he did, and he has a family who he spoke to right before he got the call to go into this college bar where a Marine was very, quiet. He didn't say anything. He just walked in, apparently just randomly started picking off people. When is this going to stop? You know what the answer is? Not until we get serious about gun control. It's just the way it is, and no one wants to talk about it. I mean, they'll be talking about video games. They'll be talking about religious freedom. They'll be talking about the Me Too movement, pissing off women, and the incels, can't get a date, and that's why they sit here and they plot and they plan to pick off girls and, kill them. And they'll talk about anything. People are shooting people with guns. You are not going to solve problems by allowing pastry chefs to refuse service to gay couples, okay? That is not what the problem in America is. If you had a brand of canned food that was poisoning people, even if it was dog food. You wouldn't first talk about distribution networks of supermarkets and the culture of the canning industry. You would take the damn thing off the shelf, the thing that is poisoning, dogs or people. You would take it off the shelf, but we cannot do that. We cannot do that because of this.
There's two focuses. There's one that I've heard: run, hide, and dial 911. That's one aspect. And there's another aspect, whereas you confront the shooter directly. And we've seen a lot of success with confronting the shooter directly. And we look at what happened with the 9/11 hijackers in Pennsylvania, for example. There's so many people at that location. If they converge on the shooter, it'll stop it. Granted, someone may get shot, but the truth of the matter is this will decrease the carnage far greater than if you look to run, hide, and dial 911.
It's our fault. We're supposed to rush the shooter. Don't you get it? It's our fault. It's our fault. We need to be armed at all times. So if you're going to a church, if you're going to a synagogue, or now if you're going line dancing, you'll be negligent if you're not carrying an automatic weapon at all times. This is sick. This is twisted. And they won't stop.
Do you believe that these security people have to have guns? Do you believe they should? Do you believe they do?
You know, Brian, I know this this sadly becomes a very politically charged question for some of the viewers, but I just ask you to think about it in common sense terms. What's your other option? In other words, there's hundreds of millions of firearms out there now that people have procured, whether they can legally get them or not. What do you do? I mean, what are you going to use against? I mean, I don't understand what you think your other options are if someone like this deranged individual shows up with a firearm intent on murdering, tens or hundreds of people in some cases. What are your choices? We're not, Brian, let's be clear here. We're not talking about good versus bad choices. We're talking about bad versus worse choices. I get the politically charged atmosphere. I've been in it for a long time. But I ask you, the answer is yes. You have the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a firearm. If you have another way to do it, I am all ears. I've yet to hear one. That's why the President of the United States, Democrats, Republicans, whoever they are, and the most important people in the world are protected with firearms. Your kids are entitled to the same.
All right, here's my here's my deal. Republicans. You want guns for all? I want Medicare for all. If you get your way, which you've been getting, guns for all, then you can see the need for health care for all. Can't you? I mean, can't you? That's a direct connection, yeah? You're going to have guns everywhere and guns all the time and guns in churches and guns in synagogues and guns in school. You want guns. You really need the health care if you're going to have all these guns. You're really going to need it. You are. You're going to need it. So, I mean, essentially all the conservative talking points on the continuous mass murders in this country boil down to the same thing. Nothing to see here. Let it lie. Because that's what I always say when someone gets shot. Let it lie. Don't say anything. Let's not talk about guns, because we want to talk about the culture first. We want to talk about the industry first. We want to talk about manufacturing. We want to talk, not to take the thing that's killing you off the shelves. Oh, no. Let's talk about, how negligent you are for not rushing the shooter with your own gun. I mean, this is just so sick, at least the shooting. We'll give the president another opportunity to say something right. Thoughts and prayers? No, you're more likely to get empathy out of a magic 8-ball than you are out of this president. So, okay, that's what happened today. And I swear to you, it's so freaking bad that I could not remember the last mass shooting, which one it was, because there were so many of them that it took me a minute to go through the timeline in my head. What's the last one? What was the last? Oh, right, it was the synagogue. Holy crap, man. People are shooting people with, this was a bucolic little neighborhood. This was a bunch of college kids. This was, a country western night. Well, yeah, whatever. I mean, let's keep things the way they are. We have a status quo. and we must respect it, and that is the wholesale slaughter of innocent people. All right, everybody. All right. Oh, my God.
We have identified the suspect. Approximately an hour ago, the suspect was identified as Ian David Long, I-A-N.
Ian.
David Long, a birth date of March 27th, 1990. He was 28 years old.
28.
We've had several contacts with Mr. Long over the years, minor events such as a traffic collision. He was a victim of a battery at a local bar in 2015. In April of this year, deputies were called to his house for a subject disturbing. They went to the house, they talked to him. He was somewhat irate, acting a little irrationally. They called out our crisis intervention team, our mental health specialist, who met with him, talked to him, and cleared him, didn't feel that he was qualified to be taken under 5150, and he was left at that scene last April.
Jesus.
Deputies are at the house now. They have secured the residence, and they're seeking a search warrant to do a thorough search of the house. The weapon used in this horrific shooting was a Glock 21 .45 caliber handgun. The handgun is designed to hold, in California, 10 rounds and one in the chamber. This weapon did have a extended magazine on it. We do not know at this time how many rounds were actually in the weapon or how many rounds the magazine could actually hold, because it's still being processed as part of the evidence.
Can I just tell you that when I heard that the mental health people were called to his house, a 28-year-old guy from the Marines, obviously suffering from some sort of PTSD or some sort of an anger, aggression issue. The police were there. They couldn't get this guy to come out of the house. He lives with his mother. Hello, red flag. Lives with his mother. His mother has constantly told the neighbors she's worried because he wouldn't get help. The neighbor said, I asked her, can he just get help? And she said he can't get help. The police were called to the house. Why? Because the neighbors heard all this loud boom, boom, smash, smash, boom, boom, right? What they heard was him kicking in the walls. They heard him punching through walls, kicking through walls. The neighbors were aware when the police came to the house. The neighbors were aware that he needed professional help. And when the police actually did come, they couldn't get him to leave the house. They couldn't get him to come out of the house. But the mental health professionals observed him, and they decided not to put him in for further observation. The neighbors constantly complained about loud noises that sounded like he was damaging the house. The Marine Corps released a statement today, condolences to the victims. He apparently served from 8 to 13. He did like a year in Afghanistan. His last post was in Hawaii. Listen, if we can't pry the guns out of your hand and ask you to please keep them at a hunting club, a shooting club. The military will do that. They won't let me have the weapon on the base. Has to go in the armory. And of course, if my job description doesn't require any kind of a weapon, guess what? Military or no, you don't get one. But if you do get one, when you go on the base, you got to put it in the armory. Why can't we do something like that? You want access to your guns? Fine. You like to shoot? Great. Go to the gun club. Check out your weapon. Everybody will know where you are when you have it, that you're okay, they've seen you. Oh, this is just unbelievable. So this guy apparently killed himself. He was found dead of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. We lost not only a Marine who slipped through the cracks, but we also lost a sheriff's deputy who was just about to be retired, and we lost 11 college-age students who just went out to have some innocent fun. One of the fathers of one of the dead boys ripped my heart out. Just ripped my heart out talking about his son who will never, ever come home.
things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
This is a heart that I'll never get back. I'll never get back. I talked to him last night before he headed out the door. First thing I said was, please don't drink and drive. Last thing I said was, son, I love you. That was the last thing I said. I thank everybody that has had their hearts out for my family since this morning I've talked. And I'm so sorry to come to you guys and tell you that my life has changed now forever. And on that, everybody's has their rights. We all live in a free world here. United States of America is for everybody. Guns are in the wrong hand. So,
guns are in the wrong hands, you think? Does anybody think that? Does anybody? No, they should be in everybody's hands, is what it is. What if I forced you to breathe my secondhand smoke? Because it's my right. What if I did that? It's just, what if I put butter in all your food and you had a heart? You know what I mean? What is this? I don't understand why we cannot have a. But again, I'll make you the deal. I will make you the deal. You give me health care for every single American, which we're gonna need, so that guys like this could get mental health care. They could get some sort of attention and some sort of serious look-see before. Okay, you give me that. Give me the health care. I'll let everybody have a gun. Everybody. Toddlers. I'll start training them at 2. Not really, but it's an idea. Karen in California.
Hey, Randy.
Hi.
I'm so pissed because this is the second time a mass shooting happened because the damn sheriff's office lets these guys off.
Didn't you have another?
Elliot Rogers.
Yeah.
Elliot Rogers. Because it's actually the third time because we had another shooting where they let these guys off without 5150 them. My son is autistic. Was 5150 by LA County Sheriff because he made a quote unquote threat. I had to get him out of a damn psychiatric hospital, a private one, who wanted to milk us for our insurance for making a damn threat, which falls into a gray area in the law. But this guy's tearing up his damn house. Oh, no, we're not going to do that. We're not even going to check him for weapons. Elliot Rogers was the same way. He had weapons, and they didn't even do a damn weapons check. We have a law here that says that if somebody is a danger to self or others, remove their weapons. How did he get an extended mag? They're illegal in California.
Yeah, they are. I know, and he did have them.
And I'm floored. I am familiar with the damn system because I have a family member who's been through the damn system. She's been through 3 times. She's been 5150. And, the problem is these sheriff's deputies are not trained. And a lot of them don't have MET teams, mental health evaluation teams, where a member of the the Department of Mental Health goes out with these deputies to evaluate people. And these deputies are not well trained, and they just let these guys go. And it's a danger because, let's face it, deputies are, law enforcement are not trained for psychiatric problems.
They shouldn't be. This is what, here's...
It's not their job.
Right, it's not their job. And it's the same thing with teachers. It's not their job. And everybody wants them all to now be... The teachers have to be police officers and mental health experts. The police officers have to be peace officers and mental health experts. Honest to God, this is crazy. This kid's mother, obviously, knew.
I know.
Right? And she should be able to call, a mental health facility, or call the VA, or call some,
There's nobody.
Right, and
There's
just
nobody.
pick up the phone and say, my son is an Afghan war vet. He's a Marine. He was a machine gunner. He's a decorated combat veteran, and he's acting erratic. He's been kicking in the walls. The whole house is full of holes in the walls, and the neighbors are complaining because they can hear him losing his stuff. And I know he has a gun. Please, can you come? And they ought to be able to take him to a VA center, or they ought to be able to take him to an outpatient situation where, where people can be treated for hyperaggression, anger issues, whatever. Instead,
oh, God, no.
I mean, this is crazy. But they want guns everywhere. Everywhere. Everybody should have one. Everyone should have one, regardless.
Not in California, but here's the thing with California. I live in Los Angeles County. Okay. All the hospitals have closed their psychiatric units. The only 2 psychiatric units in Los Angeles County within hospitals is County USC and UCLA Harbor. So hospitals around here don't have psychiatric units. Why? They're not profitable. They're not profitable. And no rich person wants to put their damn name on a fucking psychiatric unit.
Well,
so, not enough beds.
It's such a predictable combination of stuff. How could people not see it? How could people not understand that you obviously, when you have somebody with anger issues who's kicking in mom's walls and is still living at home at 28 years old and has guns, that is like a big red flag. I don't get it. This other guy, Elliot Rogers, I forget what he did because there's so many of them. What happened?
Elliot Rogers was having his parents reported him for odd behavior, and the deputies went out, but they didn't go into his home. They didn't. He was good at putting on a good face, and so they walked away. They didn't go into his home because he was posting things on social media that was very aggressive and very, And his parents said, "Hey, wait a minute," and they called Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department. And they just, he went on, oh, no big deal. And so they walked away because they didn't have a MET team, which, like I said, mental health evaluation team.
Is he the incel dude? He's the incel dude. Right. Yep. I remember him. He actually put up a video. I have it. It's so scary, this video. I have it. Him sitting in his car saying to the world that he was going to kill girls because they wouldn't give him the time of day. And that this was his plan, and he was going to do it, and here's what he was going to do. And he freaking did it.
Well, here's our story. I had a family member who was suicidal 3 times, was 5150. That person had a gun. We took the gun. My husband and I took the gun. And because we were worried about that person. Not once. And that person was a registered gun user. It was registered and everything. Not once did Orange County Sheriff call us asking us, where's the gun? Never once. Nobody ever asked about that gun.
Listen, we have a status quo in this country that cannot be disturbed, and that is the mass slaughter of people at the hands of people who should not have guns that continually fall through the cracks of various police officers when these people's parents, wives, loved ones, whatever, friends say, this kid is about to go completely, off the rails, and nothing gets done. And then all of a sudden, you got, a whole bunch of dead kids in school. You got a whole bunch of dead people in a church. You got a whole bunch of people dead in a synagogue, and now you got a whole bunch of, line dancers dead in a bar.
Well, like I said, in Los Angeles County, the only 2 hospitals that have psychiatric units is the 2 I mentioned. The rest are handled by private psychiatric facilities. My son was placed in one against all logic. And when I went there to get him out after lots of threats, I noticed that they had more administrative staff than they had
doctors.
Staff. Yeah. And it was shocking. They were letting homeless people in to eat in their cafeteria because they get paid for that. But the patients had to earn the privilege, quote unquote, earn the privilege to eat in the cafeteria. It was shocking. My mother and I, when we were there to get my son out, we're like, oh my God, they had little kids in this facility, most likely foster children, to get paid. And what they do is they hold on to you. My son had not even been fully admitted because I refused to sign any paperwork. Again, I am familiar with the system. They had already submitted a letter to my insurance company asking to hold him for 2 more weeks without evaluating him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we have it here with drug rehabs. Okay, we have it here. This is Florida.
We have it here too in California.
Yeah,
we have it in California with the drug rehab.
It's unbelievable. Florida is the point of exit and entry into drug addiction. They get you addicted here with the pain doctors, and then they rehab you at the rehab center, and then they send you to the halfway house, which is not regulated. And we have all these, and we have all these people just walking around with the cravings and everything, not completely, you know, in the pink cloud, whatever, thinking and then all of a sudden they go out and they use, and guess what? They end up with, some guy with a gun, and it's a recipe for disaster. But you know what? This is Florida. What do we, you know?
And California has the same problem. We have the drug rehab Riviera here.
Yeah.
And it's contributing to our homeless problem. The Orange County Register did an awesome, Orange County Register of all papers did an awesome series on the drug rehab Riviera, because the one downside to the ACA is it pays for the drug rehabs, but they're completely unregulated in California, along with the sober living homes, which can spread up in any neighborhood here.
Yeah.
And it's the same problem.
Yeah, we have it here too. Same way.
Yeah. And it's the same thing. And see, California is highly regulated on guns, but and Jerry Brown just signed legislation on the drug rehabs, but guess what? It doesn't make it a felony. It just says, you can lose your license. Big whoop. They don't care. They'll just bring up with a new name and another license.
But this is the whole idea. This is the whole problem. This is the whole idea behind making medical care a not-for-profit industry. Okay, as soon as you start building the profit motive into things like medical, mental health care or rehabilitation or private prisons, guess what? You need customers in order to be profitable. So you create them. You literally create them.
It's like the whole thing with the kidney dialysis proposition.
Yeah.
That people voted against. They don't realize DaVita makes a ton of money off of kidney. Why is that even a chain?
Yeah.
For kidney dialysis, what the hell is that? And they didn't want to pay their workers.
Right.
Same with the ambulance company.
Right.
That they put on that damn ballot, and I couldn't believe people actually voted for that. It's like they're trying to weasel out of paying their workers. And
definitely. There's no question about it. And it's the people that would tend to you that really are getting stiffed over and over and over again. And it's the people who own the four walls and the windows that are being enriched by this. And so, it's a real sick system. I mean, the system itself is so sick, which is why I say I'll make you a trade. You could have your guns, but you're going to give me a not-for-profit healthcare system. And you're going to give it to me because we need it right freaking now to solve 3/4 of the problems that we have with mental health and guns.
Well, people are so stupid. They don't see insurance for what it is.
No.
I used to work for an insurance company. I used to work for AIG. I used to work for one of the biggest in workers' comp. People are stupid. It's like, hey, idiots, you're paying for a really expensive coupon book. Okay? You're still paying monster amounts of money for premiums, and you're still paying out of pocket for co-pays, deductibles, prescriptions. Why are you, have you not looked at how much you're paying in premium? You shouldn't be paying for anything out of your own pocket. But you guys still cling to this because it's the way you've always done it, because God knows human beings hate change. And, you're paying for marketing.
You know what kills me? Of course you're paying for marketing. Look at when you watch the news, okay? Mm-hmm. Just do a little experiment. Make a little hash mark every time you see a pharmaceutical commercial for anything. Or
an insurance company commercial.
What do you think those commercials cost? They're like $800,000 a minute. A minute.
Exactly.
So who do you think is paying for that? So that you could ask your doctor about Taltz. You could ask your doctor about Humira. You could ask your doctor about, Zetia. You could ask your doctor about Xeljanz. I mean, come on. This is crazy. This is nuts.
That one with McDreamy and, all those actors. in it, from the TV shows for HealthNet. I see that one. I'm like, yeah, look at how much they're paying them and how much for that big, beautiful commercial. And you're paying for that from HealthNet, whose marketing budget is how much?
Right.
And that's where your money is going, people.
And still these insurance companies are billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar profits every single year.
Insurance companies never lose money.
They never do. And we still, can't get, anything to, make sure that we're covered for, a gunshot wound. Really?
Insurance companies will never lose. I told you, I worked for AIG, and let me tell you, they never lose money for a reason. That's how they're built. That is the basis of their business. They will raise premiums over them losing $1.
I know. Thank you, Karen.
No problem.
Thank you. It's upsetting when you've even come in contact with anything having to do with the system of trying to get proper help for somebody who needs it. The whole thing is rigged against people, and then we see this carnage. What did he say at his inaugural? Oh, the carnage ends now. Really? The carnage has like double, triple, quadruple. And how third world does this have to look? Can't you see how third world we're getting? Our government is filthy dirty. Our president is dirty. You got gun violence everywhere. What do you think they're fleeing in Central America? Bad government and gun violence. It's so third world.
Well, Matt Whitaker, I don't know Matt Whitaker. Matt Whitaker worked for Jeff Sessions, and he was always extremely highly thought of, and he still is. But I didn't know Matt Whitaker. He worked for Attorney General Sessions. He was very, very highly thought of and still is highly thought of. But this only comes up because anybody that works for me, they do a number on them. But Matt Whitaker is a very smart man. He is a very respected man in the law enforcement community, very respected at the top of the line. And actually, the choice was greeted with raves initially, and it still is in some circles on, it's a shame that no matter who I put in, they go after him. It's very, very sad, I have to say. But he's acting. I think he'll do a very good job, and we'll see what happens. But I will say this, Matt Whitaker is a very highly respected man, and you didn't have any problems with Matt Whitaker when he worked for Jeff Sessions. He's respected by law enforcement. He's a very strong law enforcement personality and person.
Okay, there's so much there. First of all, just remember, he said he doesn't know Matt Whitaker. He doesn't know him. He worked for Jeff Sessions. He was chief of staff to Jeff Sessions. He doesn't know him. He doesn't know him. And he's highly respected by law enforcement. And he repeats himself over and over and over. It's a very weird thing he does. Liars do that. They just repeat the lie over and over and over and over. I don't know him. I don't know him. I don't know him. Very respected. He's very respected, strongly respected by law enforcement. Before he worked at the Department of Justice, Whitaker's job was working for a patent scam company that a federal court hit up for $25 million in a settlement and shut it down. Who thinks highly of a person who commits $25 million worth of fraud? Oh, that's right, the MAGA people. It's just like Trump. That's exactly what he did with the Trump University fraud scam. I mean, this is just so unbelievable. But remember, he says he doesn't know him, okay? He doesn't know him. He never met him. Has no idea who he is. Okay, everybody, this is Fox News from a couple of weeks ago.
One other question, though. In the Washington Post this morning, it says that you talked to the Attorney General's chief of staff about replacing the Attorney General. Apparently, according to the Post, you talked to Matthew Whitaker, but the conversation was nebulous, they depicted as. It wasn't clear whether you wanted him to replace him on an interim basis or he would be nominated on a more permanent basis. Anything to that story?
Well, I never talk about that, but I can tell you Matt Whitaker is a great guy. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker, but I never talk about conversations that I had. But, you know, the Washington... I don't know Matt Whitaker. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker. I don't know Matt Whitaker. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker. I don't know Matt Whitaker. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker.
Does anybody in their right mind, and this is now the caveat, right? In your right mind, think that Donald Trump would put somebody in charge of the Mueller investigation that he didn't know? Does anybody think that that would be a possibility with Donald Trump, that he would choose a staffer of Jeff Sessions, no less, that he did not know and was not in the succession order, that he would pluck out this constitutional nobody if he didn't know him to be in charge of Mueller, to supervise? Does anybody believe that? This is some sick crap that's going on here.
I don't know Matt Whitaker. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker. I don't know Matt Whitaker. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker. I don't know Matt Whitaker. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker. I don't know Matt Whitaker. I mean, I know Matt Whitaker.
Matt Whitaker is his stooge, just like Kavanaugh is his stooge. Matt Whitaker actually looks like Curly. He looks like one of the three stooges if Curly had a problem with steroids. Right? No, look at him. This was a man that worked for a patent company, selling trying to, tell people that their inventions were going to go all the way if they just paid him. And he would, take their patent and he would market it for them and blah, blah, blah. And the whole thing was just a stinking scam. The company was operating here in Miami, for God's sake. In Miami. We actually have a little clip of him doing that. Which one is it? Do you know? I don't know. Yeah, me too. I got like 50 clips or something today because this man gave an unhinged little there. He's on his way to Paris for Veterans Day. Whose side is he on? It's just so bad. It's just so bad. This is unbelievable. Kellyanne Conway's husband, George Conway III, he's a Roman numeral, everybody, and Neil Katyal, who wrote the Independent Counsel statute, put a op-ed in the New York Times today saying that this Whitaker dude is a constitutional nobody and should not be able to be in charge of the Justice Department because he is not a Senate-confirmed cabinet member. Oh, okay. Here's him selling hot tubs when he worked for that company.
Tub swivel seat, because it's a unique design that's going to help lots of people that have mobility issues get in and use their hot tub in a safe manner.
That's your Attorney General, everybody. Trying to promote a handicapped hot tub. Oh, my God. And the company was shut down, and he was on the board of directors, and he was obviously active. He wasn't a passive, board of directors. He was doing, and people, filed complaints, and the court found for the people that he was taking money from and ordered that company to pay $25 million. That's who is respected by law enforcement. That's who. And then Trump is sitting there lying this morning about Whitaker. He literally went on. Listen to him repeat himself in this. This is just so frightening. Okay, this really, really gave me the shivers. Only because I could see how mentally ill he is. I really could see it in this particular clip. The repetitiveness, the insisting that what is false is true. He's going to tell you in this clip that Matt Whitaker is Senate confirmed and that Robert Mueller is not. Okay, Robert Mueller was Senate confirmed to be the FBI director twice. He was Senate confirmed in 2001, and then when his term was over, he had to be confirmed again. And so he was confirmed again in 2011. They had a whole separate hearing in the Senate I tweeted it out, the whole hearing I tweeted out on my Twitter feed to show you that Mueller was not only Senate confirmed once, but twice to be the chief law enforcement officer at the FBI, right? To be the director of the FBI. Now, Matt Whitaker was a U.S. attorney once in Iowa in 2004. He was Senate confirmed to that job, but then it lapsed. And he's not been confirmed for this job. Now, let me also tell you, Robert Mueller doesn't even need to be Senate confirmed. Why? Because Robert Mueller is what you call an inferior officer. What is an inferior officer? That means he's supervised by a Senate confirmed person. And that Senate confirmed person is Rod Rosenstein. Now they want it to be Whitaker, who's not Senate confirmed. What does it mean to be a principal officer? What's the definition? Super easy, everybody. If you're a principal officer, you only answer to the President of the United States. You don't have a supervisor, except for the President of the United States. So who would that be? The Attorney General of the United States, the FBI director, the EPA director, all the cabinet positions. They're Senate confirmed, and they report only to the President. They're called principal officers. They all have to be Senate confirmed. You cannot be in charge of the Justice Department. You can't be the Attorney General of the United States without being confirmed to be the principal officer, the Attorney General of the United States. Here's your president, though.
Matt Whitaker has not gone through a Senate process. Yeah, but neither has Mueller. Excuse me. You talk about the Senate process. Mueller is doing a report. He hasn't gone through the Senate process. So you're saying Whitaker hasn't, but Whitaker has. Wait a minute. Because he was a really distinguished U.S. attorney in Iowa, and he was approved by everybody, because to be U.S. attorney, that's top of the line. He was a highly respected, in fact, I'll tell you, the ambassador to China, as you know, Terry Branstad, who used to be the governor of Iowa, he told me that what a great choice that is, that he is one of the most respected people in all of Iowa. And that was coming from Terry Branstad, who was the governor. Look, Mueller, a big complaint people have, Mueller was not Senate confirmed. So he's doing a report. He wasn't Senate confirmed. Whitaker was Senate confirmed. And now he doesn't need this, but he was Senate confirmed at the highest level when he was the U.S. attorney from Iowa. But Mueller was not Senate confirmed. Why didn't they get him Senate confirmed? He should have been Senate confirmed. Because of all the conflicts, they didn't want to bring him before the Senate because he's very conflicted. So because of those conflicts, they didn't want to bring him before the Senate. But don't tell me about Whitaker. Don't tell me about Whitaker because Mueller was not Senate confirmed.
Holy crap. That's the president. Holy crap. Okay, here's the editorial that was written by Neil Katyal, who wrote the statute under which Mueller serves as an inferior officer, reporting to a Senate-confirmed officer, Rosenstein, in tandem with George Conway III. Oh, he trashed George Conway. Wow, listen to this.
Kellyanne's husband wrote that. You mean Mr. Kellyanne Conway?
Oh my God!
You were unconstitutionally appointed, and is he wrong? He's just trying to get publicity for himself. Why don't you do this? Why don't you ask Kellyanne that question? All right. She might know him better than me. I really don't know the guy.
He doesn't know him. He doesn't know Kellyanne Conway's husband. He doesn't know him. Ask Kellyanne, okay? She might know him better than me. In the ultimate loyalty test, the question here is, will you throw your own husband under the bus? I don't believe Kellyanne will disappoint. I really don't. He can split individual families just the way he splits us down the ass crack. All right, here is what Kellyanne Conway's husband and Neil Katyal, who wrote the statute, okay, put in the New York Times today. What now seems an eternity ago, the conservative law professor Stephen Calabrese pushed in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal in May, arguing that Robert Mueller's appointment as special counsel was unconstitutional. His article got a lot of attention, and it wasn't long before President Trump picked up the argument, tweeting the appointment of the special counsel is totally, all in caps, unconstitutional. Professor Calabresi's article was based on the Appointments Clause of the Constitution, Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2. Under that provision, so-called principal officers of the United States must be nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate under its advise and consent powers. He argued that Mr. Mueller was a principal officer because he's exercising significant law enforcement authority, and that since he has not been confirmed by the Senate, his appointment was unconstitutional. He was wrong. What makes an officer a principal officer is that he or she only reports to the president. No one else in government is that person's boss. But Robert Mueller reports to Rod Rosenstein, the deputy attorney general. So Mueller is known as an inferior officer, not a principal one. And his appointment without Senate approval was valid. But Professor Calabresi and Mr. Trump were right about the core principle. A principal officer must be confirmed by the Senate. And that has a very significant consequence today. It means that Mr. Trump's installation of Matthew Whitaker as acting Attorney General of the United States, after forcing the resignation of Jeff Sessions, is unconstitutional. It is illegal. And it means that anything Mr. Whitaker does or tries to do in that position is invalid. Much of the commentary about Mr. Whitaker's appointment is focused on all sorts of technical points about the Vacancies Reform Act. Yes, I read that to you yesterday. It's 2 lousy paragraphs. And Justice Department succession statutes. But the flaw in the appointment of Mr. Whitaker, who was Jeff Sessions' chief of staff, runs much deeper. It defies one of the explicit checks and balances set out in the Constitution, a provision designed to protect all of us against the centralization of government power. If you don't believe us, then take it from Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, whom Mr. Trump once called his favorite sitting justice. Last year, the Supreme Court examined the question of whether the general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board had been lawfully appointed to his job without Senate confirmation. The Supreme Court held the appointment was invalid on a statutory ground. Justice Thomas agreed with the judgment and wrote separately to emphasize that even if the statute had allowed the appointment, the Constitution Appointments Clause would not have. The officer in question was a principal officer, he concluded, and the public interest was protected by the Appointments Clause, and that was critical. The Constitution's drafters, Justice Thomas, argued, and this is what Clarence Thomas wrote, quote, recognize the serious risk for abuse and corruption posed by permitting one person to fill every office in the government. Which is why, he points out, the framers provided for advice and consent of the Senate, so that one man could not pick the head of the FBI. One man and use it for political purposes. So one man couldn't pick the attorney general and use his office to retaliate against American citizens. The Senate had to weigh whether or not that person was sufficiently dedicated to the law. What goes for a mere lawyer at the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, goes in spades for the Attorney General of the United States, the head of the Justice Department, one of the most important people in the federal government. It is one thing to appoint an acting underling, like an acting solicitor general, a post one of us held. That'd be Neil Katyal. But those officials are always supervised by higher-ups. In the case of the solicitor general, by the attorney general and the deputy attorney general, both confirmed by the Senate. Mr. Whitaker has not been named to some junior post, 1 or 2 levels below the Justice Department's top job. He has now been vested with the law enforcement authority of the entire United States government, including the power to supervise Senate-confirmed officials like the Deputy Attorney General, like the Solicitor General, and all the U.S. attorneys. We cannot tolerate such an evasion of the Constitution's very explicit, textually precise design. Senate confirmation exists for a simple and good reason. Constitutionally, Matthew Whitaker is a nobody. His job as Sessions Chief of Staff did not require Senate confirmation. Yes, he was confirmed as a federal prosecutor in Iowa in 2004. But when he stepped away from that job, any job that he took that required Senate confirmation to that new job. You can't cut and paste an old, lapsed confirmation to this day and date. Can't do it. Can't have it, Sally. Can't do it. I can't do it. I can't have it. For the president to install Mr. Whitaker as our chief law enforcement officer is to betray the entire structure of our charter document, the Constitution. And then they go on to talk about in times of crisis or disease and wars or other tragic events, it's understandable that may have to pick somebody who isn't if nobody else who is Senate confirmed is at hand. But there are people at hand. You have the Deputy Attorney General. You have the Solicitor General. You have the Deputy Solicitor General. They were all nominated by Trump, and they were all confirmed by the Senate. And any of them could step in as acting Attorney General, both constitutionally and statutorily. Because Mr. Whitaker has not undergone the process of Senate confirmation, there has been no mechanism for scrutinizing whether or not he has the character or ability or to even-handedly enforce the law in a position of such grave responsibility. The public is entitled to that assurance, especially since Mr. Whitaker's only supervisor is Donald Trump himself, and the president is hopelessly compromised by the Mueller investigation. And that is why adherence to the requirements of the appointment clause is so important here and always. And then they go on to tell us that the Constitution is a bipartisan document written for the ages to guard against wrongdoing by officials of any party. And Mr. Whitaker's installation makes a mockery of our Constitution and of the ideals of the founders. As Justice Thomas's opinion in the NLRB case reminds us, the Constitution's framers, quote, had lived under a form of government that permitted arbitrary governmental acts to happen unchecked. They knew that liberty could be preserved only by ensuring that the powers of the government would never be consolidated in one man. And then he freaking lies about it. I don't know him. I don't know him. I know him. I know him. I don't know him. I don't know him. I know him. I know him. Mueller wasn't confirmed. Mueller was confirmed twice to be the FBI director. But this position that Mueller is in does not require Senate confirmation. Does everybody now know why? Okay? Here, repeat after me. Because he reports to a Senate-confirmed officer. That would be Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General. As long as Mueller is supervised by Rosenstein, which he is, he does not have to be Senate confirmed. And we know this because that is what Neil Katyal wrote in the statute when he created the statute that authorizes the independent counsel or the special counsel. This is so sick and twisted. I swear to God, I can't even breathe when I think about it. And Neil Katyal was actually asked about this.
Yeah, so, I'm kind of old school about this. I've always kind of thought attorneys generals need to be confirmed by the Senate, that you couldn't just install your own lackey in. And by old school, I mean, I'm just talking about the founding design of the Constitution, and that's really what the piece I wrote with George Conway is about, which is, why do we have this thing called Senate confirmation? Because in Article 2 of our Constitution, it says that the president can't install heads of the department on his own, that there's a whole deep reason for this. And Justice Thomas, who happens to be the president's favorite justice, just wrote an opinion about this a couple of years ago, and he said, look, our founders are worried about maybe we're going to have a corrupt president one day, and you can't just have him install his lackeys in as heads of the department, because that would destroy the checks and balances in the executive branch itself.
It's interesting, Neil, that there are quite a few conservatives, not just conservative attorneys and conservative constitutional scholars, but even rank-and-file, hardcore conservatives like Eric Erickson, who says, just to be clear, you can have an acting attorney general like Sally Yates, but you cannot have an acting attorney general who has not been through a confirmation process for an AG position. Yates was confirmed as a deputy AG. Whitaker has not. And of course, there's a professor and a constitutional lawyer who was about as expansive for George W. Bush in framing presidential authority. And even he came out saying, wait, this is so unconstitutional. A president does not have this authority.
Yeah, that's 100% right. So obviously you can have emergency situations and the attorney general dies or is forced out or something like that. You need to have someone temporarily to fill their place. But that's always been understood to be someone who is Senate confirmed. And here you've got a whole bunch of people who are Senate confirmed, like the deputy attorney general, like the solicitor general. And when Congress confirms those people, they know, well, one day those people could step in if the attorney general is resigned or something like that. But we've never had a situation like this, certainly not in our lifetimes, in which the president kind of reaches down into the bowels of the Justice Department to pick his lackey, skipping over all the people in the line of succession at the Justice Department, which is actually something enumerated by law, by Congress. I think there's a deeper fundamental problem here, which is it really underscores this president's constitutional insouciance. When I served in the Justice Department, I have twice now, I think one of the things we thought the most about was, look, you have these emergency authorities. You can use them in terrorism and cabinet, things and all sorts of stuff. But you have to be really circumspect in using them, because those laws are written broadly for a reason, which is there may be some real crisis. What's the crisis here that requires skipping over the people in the Justice Department who've been Senate confirmed? There's only one crisis, and it looks like Donald Trump. He's afraid of Mueller. He's afraid of what's going on, and so he's willing to break the Constitution to stop it.
So this is what I'm saying. Everybody's like, well, how will we know if we're in a constitutional crisis? We know. This man is shredding the Constitution. We can't get our votes counted, okay? You're going to have angry mobs banging on supervisors' doors tomorrow, at least in Florida. Okay, Arizona, they're still, counting ballots. You got about 400,000 out, and we don't know the result yet. But here in Florida, we're into recounts. Here in Florida, we had a ballot that didn't include the top of the ticket race. The Senate race was put in a separate column underneath ballot instructions off to the side. And the top of the ballot started not with the top of the ticket race, the statewide Senate race, but it started with the governor's race. You had more people voting for governor, tens of thousands, only in one county, though, because our ballots are all different. Okay, district to district, our ballots are different. And in this one district, Frederica Wilson's district, by the way, and the reason why she wasn't on the ballot is because she didn't have a Republican challenger and she had won her primary. So she didn't need to be on the ballot. And so what you had was governor, then you had, attorney general, then you had agriculture commissioner, and you had some other race, I forget. But those down ballot races got more votes than the Senate race did. Tens of thousands of more votes. That was obviously so that they could rig the election for Rick Scott, because he needs that Senate seat. Why does he need the Senate seats? because the House is going to investigate the hell out of him, okay? And the Senate, after he's impeached, the Senate will have to have a trial. The Senate is going to be responsible for removing. And as long as he holds these sycophants into the Senate, the Rick Scotts of the world, and the Lindsey Grahams of the world, as long as he has the Senate, he will never be removed. That's why he's saying, let them impeach me. I think politically it would be a good thing for me because my rabid asshole crowd will love that I'm being attacked. They will come and they will defend me. Where are the bikers for Trump? He's actually putting out a call for violence. It's unbelievable. Meanwhile, he lost West Virginia, okay? He went there a million times. He lost Wisconsin. He went there a million times. He lost the Senate race in Montana. He went there a million times, okay? That's why they're fighting so hard for Florida and for Arizona. He needs a head count to keep him from being removed, is what this is about. Why would we remove him? Because he's obviously shredding the Constitution right in front of your face. This Whitaker dude, he says he doesn't even know him. Of course he knows him. He knows him.
I don't know Matt Whitaker.
I mean, I know Matt Whitaker.
I don't know Matt Whitaker.
I mean, I know Matt Whitaker.
I don't know Matt Whitaker.
I mean, I know Matt Whitaker.
I don't know Matt Whitaker.
I mean, I know Matt Whitaker.
This is a sick thing. Of course he knows. Do you believe anybody, does anybody in this audience believe that Donald Trump would put somebody's flunky in charge of Robert Mueller that he didn't know? Well, I never would have appointed Jeff Sessions if I knew he would recuse himself. No, he has vetted this Whitaker dude. He's lying. And Whitaker's been all over the TV. That's the thing. After Whitaker, was, run out of Dodge because he was running a fraudulent patent company, bilking people out of thousands and thousands of dollars, he went back to Iowa with his tail between his legs. Now, you got this Iowa cabal, okay? You got Senator Grassley, who's the head of the Judiciary Committee, Iowa. Branstad, who, was the governor of Iowa. Steve King in the Iowa. That's why I was begging Iowa, please don't do this. Please don't do this. Please think this through. Think this through. But this is all coming out of Iowa. Whitaker, out of Iowa. Moved to New York City after that Miami debacle in order to get on television to convince Donald Trump that he knew how to fire Mueller, that he knew how to do it, that Hillary was the focus of, Hillary needed to be indicted. She was the person that they should focus on.
We all know that the Clinton private email server was a violation of law. The only person that can enforce that act is the Attorney General. And this administration clearly has no interest, whether it was Holder or whether it's a former U.S. attorney in New York named Loretta Lynch. Either one has no desire to go after Hillary.
You get it? He's been on television so many times that they brought him in. Donald Trump hears something on Fox News or hears something on the TV that's positive, and he will call that person, and we know that. Sean Hannity was called up on stage. It's like Fox just said, screw it. Jeanine Pirro was brought up on stage like, screw it, okay? We're not even going to pretend to be fair and balanced. We're just going to, go for it now. They have a propaganda machine. It's cranking out crap. Like, I don't know him. I do know him. Oh, Felix Sater? I wouldn't know him if, you had him in a lineup. And then a business card is produced. Felix Sater, senior advisor to President Donald Trump at the Trump Organization. Oh, Paul Manafort, he only worked for me for a very short time. He's been living in that building, and they've been friends for 20 years. Same with Roger Stone, friends for 30 years. Oh, my God. It's like insanity. Well, it is.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I think Jim Acosta is a very unprofessional man. I think he does this with everybody. He gets paid to do that. You know, he gets paid to burst in. He's a very unprofessional guy. Whether it was me or Ronald Reagan or anybody else, he would have done the same thing. Look, I don't think he's a smart person, but he's got a loud voice. And here, wait, David, do you mind if I answer the question? And as far as I'm concerned, I haven't made that decision, but it could be others also.
Oh.
When you're in the White House, this is a very sacred place to me. This is a very special place. You have to treat the White House with respect. You have to treat the presidency with respect. If you've ever seen him dealing with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, it's a disgrace. And he does it for, you know, the reason. The same thing with April Ryan. I watch her get up.
Oh, my God.
I mean, you talk about somebody that's a loser. She doesn't know what the hell she's doing. She gets publicity, and then she gets a pay raise, or she gets a contract with, I think, CNN. But she's very nasty, and she shouldn't be. She shouldn't be. You've got to treat the White House and the office of the presidency with respect.
Oh, my God. He's going to lecture us about respect for the presidency. He is. He's going to lecture us about tone and Sarah Huckabee Sanders tweeted out a doctored fake video that was made by InfoWars to allege, to lie and say that Jim Acosta had manhandled and attacked and accosted a young White House intern who looks so much like Hope Hicks, it's almost creepy. It's like he replaces one with another lookalike. It was just, and then as soon as he got done saying, you must have respect for the office of the presidency, and you must have respect, and the way that Sarah, the freaking propagandist, people are appalled. That the White House News Photographers Association, among others, said it was appalled by Sarah Sanders' video that was doctored, that had sped up the frames to make it look like Jim Acosta was, chopping the arm of an intern who was literally grabbing the microphone out of Jim Acosta's hand. The reason why Jim Acosta had the microphone is because he was called on. That's number one. Number two, he was asking a question. The president didn't like the question, didn't feel like answering the question, and he started berating Jim Acosta. And Jim Acosta was not rude. And in fact, when this girl, I tweeted, I hold my mic too. I don't have to, but I've been doing it this way for so long. It relaxes me, actually. But honestly, if somebody came up to me and tried to grab my mic out of my hand, I don't think I would have been, pardon me, ma'am, which is what Jim Acosta said to her. Pardon me, ma'am. Oh, yeah, I know every time I, think about assaulting somebody, I want to say, pardon me, before I assault them. I think I would bop them over the head. I mean, it's like a weapon, right? I mean, if you wanted to attack somebody and somebody was grabbing I'd bop you. I'm trained to fight, for God's sake. But this is what happened. This is the real video of what happened. And she tweeted out some fake, like, authoritarian governments do this. Hitler used to do this. Lots of totalitarians manipulate public. Stalin used to do it. They would Photoshop out certain people or Photoshop in certain. During the McCarthy era, they did it too. Senator McCarthy of Wisconsin, no less, when he was doing the big red scare hearings, when everybody was a communist and, under every rock was a communist and all the Jews were communists, that was anti-Semitic too. That whole 1950s commie hunting thing. But they would do that too. They would Photoshop a person into a photo of a known communist. This is in the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union. They regularly airbrushed out people in state photos and put them out. Stalin purged any international enemy out of any photo. The wartime governments censor images. You know that we did it in World War II, right? Modern day regimes, Kim Jong-un does it. And now you have the White House doing it. The White House doing it, and the president insisting that Jim Acosta be shut down and shut out. They took his press pass. Look.
Why do you mind? I mean,
I was just told to do it.
Okay, well, I have every right to record this. This is Jim Acosta. I am in front of the White House. Secret Service officer is asking for my hard pass. Obviously, no hard feelings to the officer, but I am now giving my hard pass to the Secret Service. So, do you want to take it off the lanyard there? Or? Sure. You need help there?
Actually, yeah, here. If you could hold that, I don't want to lose any of that.
Sure.
Been here for a while, huh?
Well, yeah, I've been working at the White House for 5 years, covering 2 administrations. So, yeah, it's been in that thing for a while.
I'll put this back here for you.
All right. Thank you for your service, officer.
Yeah, he's a real asshole, isn't he? Thank you for your service, officer. Here is what actually, this is the real freaking tape, okay?
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to challenge you on one of the statements that you made in the tail end of the campaign in the midterms.
Here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, the caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me that. I appreciate it.
Why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you demonized immigrants in this election to try to keep them?
I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. You know, they have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process, and I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign.
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in.
Oh, my God.
But your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
Well, that's true. But they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. Right. These were people. This was an actual, it happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President,
that's
I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am.
Pardon me, ma'am.
That's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Mr. President. I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts his butt.
Well, I'm not a big fan of yours either. So
I understand.
To be honest.
So let me ask you a question, if I can. You repeatedly said
you aren't the best,
Mr. President. You repeatedly over the course of
just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead.
Oh, my God. All right. And then today he said others are going to have their press pass revoked, too. So he's shredding the Constitution by appointing flunkies to run the Justice Department without Senate confirmation to protect him. Literally shredding the Constitution. He's attacking and has been attacking a free press because he can't handle it. He doesn't like the hard questions. He said today others might also lose their press passes. We can't get our votes counted. Everybody's got a gun. The country is literally polarized right down the ass crack. And you don't think that we're in a constitutional crisis. You don't think that this country is being destroyed from within. Let me show you something. Right after he did this thing about Jim Acosta today again. Well, he's rude, and the way he talks to Sarah, who's tweeting out doctored fake videos. I mean, fake videos. In order to sway public opinion through propaganda. Another reporter, a female reporter, had the temerity to ask him a question about the Mueller investigation again today, which is what set him off there, right? That and the fact that he put out a racist TV commercial that was so racist of a Mexican guy who had snuck into the country under Bill Clinton, was deported under Bill Clinton, came back into the country under George Bush, was arrested by Sheriff Arpaio in Maricopa County and released twice. And Donald Trump was running this racist ad with this guy in court who eventually shot 2 police officers at his sentencing. The guy is from Mexico and said Democrats let him in, and then conflated Mexico, which is a separate country, with Hondurans who are hundreds of miles away, who will surrender themselves to Border Patrol to make claims of asylum, which is completely legal. That's what Jim Acosta was asking him about. Today, he was leaving for Paris because, of course, that's where you want to spend Americans' Veterans Day, in Paris, right? And this reporter, her name is Abby Phillip. She's from CNN also. Oh, man, I lost my list. I think it's 11 or 5. Yeah, it's 11. Thanks. She asked him a question.
The USMCA. Do you accept Matt Whitaker to be involved in the Russia probe? Do you want him?
It's up to him.
Do you want him to rein in Robert Mueller?
What a stupid question that is. What a stupid question. But I watch you a lot. You ask a lot of stupid questions.
This is the person who is preaching to us about rudeness, and the presidency must be treated with respect, and da-da-da. He calls Abby Phillip because she asked him, do you want Whitaker to get rid of the Mueller investigation? And he goes, what a stupid question. But I watch you a lot. You always ask stupid questions. Right after he got done lecturing us about the presidency is a place that's it's a sacred place and it must be respected. And then he starts to attack the press and anybody that asks him a question about this unconstitutional appointment here with this guy who is a flunky. He is a nobody who suddenly everybody knows his name because Trump put him in charge of the most awesome law enforcement agency we have, the entire freaking Justice Department, which means all the attorneys general report to this guy who is a fraud and was found to be a fraud by a court and ordered to pay $25 million, his company, for defrauding people. Oh my God. Oh my God.
You had some that decided to, let's stay away. They did very poorly. I'm not sure that I should be happy or sad, but I feel just fine about it. Mia Love gave me no love. Sorry about that, Mia. They got nothing. Zero. You know why? Because there is nothing. They can play that game, but we can play it better. If that happens, then we're going to do the same thing, and government comes to a halt. And I'm very happy with most of my cabinet. They're under audit. They have been for a long time. They're extremely complex. People wouldn't understand them. People don't understand tax returns. It's a very complex instrument. People wouldn't understand it. I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN. That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, the other folks have
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am.
Pardon me, ma'am. That all of a sudden has turned into propaganda to kill freedom of the press, to keep out press people to I mean, he's pretty much ended press conferences. Sarah just now tweets doctored videos from InfoWars now. This is the presidency. This is the office of the president of the United States. InfoWars, really? This is a sickness. Oh, and by the way, you know who's paying for the protesters in Miami? During the break, I was reading an article. The Mercer family. Those protesters are paid protesters by the Mercer family. Yeah, they did all these Facebook groups, just like they did with the election, right? All these Facebook groups, and they told everybody, go down to Miami and start protesting. So over the weekend, we're going to have all these, Mercer family, protest, the Rebecca Mercers and the Cambridge Analytica folks. Yeah. They put out the call, and everybody is, going to go to be their beck and call girls and bang on windows while we try and do a recount in Florida tomorrow. This is a sick situation. No free press, okay? No free press. No constitutional anything apply. Emoluments clause. What is the emoluments clause? Foreign governments cannot buy off your president. He violates that. He violates the Constitution Appointments Clause. He violates the Advise and Consent Clause. He's picking flunkies. He's picking. Oh my God! And he lies and lies and what?
No, you're just talking about the paid people there. There's a video that just went viral of Representative Matt Gaetz arguing with a Gillum supporter, arguing.
Oh, Gaetz? Yeah, he's another lunatic.
Yeah,
that's another white
Matt Gaetz.
supremacist. From the northern hinterlands of Florida. Not where the people live. Where the cows live. Where the oranges grow. Where the workers are all immigrants. Oh my God. And you know, those people there, they're like, well, I might be poor. I might live in a double wide. But at least I ain't brown. I like that Matt Gaetz. He's stupid. I could be smarter than my own congressman. Oh my God. Yeah, you watch, you wait. This weekend's going to be a doozy because the more they count, the more the Republicans are threatened here because these are Democratic districts. Palm Beach is Democratic except for the island. And so is Fort Lauderdale and Miami. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.